I've had this Surface Pro 4 since its release in October of 2015. It was a great computer for many years, but I've left it to collect dust for some years now. I have a need for a speedier than usual ChromeOS computer that's also compact enough for me to take on trips. My needs are specific, so I'll see how well this Surface Pro 4 stacks up next. The memories of why I stopped using this computer is starting to return. Charging always required plugging in the cable upside down. I'm also reminded that the keyboard cover stopped working a while ago. Luckily, for now, the touchscreen still works. The battery still charges okay, but it keeps the computer running for about 30 minutes before being totally drained. Upon visual inspection, the keyboard could use a refurbish or replacement. The shell of the computer has very few scratches, if any. There is a deep scratch on the upper left corner, but the case is not deformed from it. So here's a list of my to-do items in chronological order. The Teams meeting test, item 2 on the list, is important because if it works, the Surface Pro can become my new work-from-home computer that's a lot more portable than anything else I've used in the past. The charger does work, albeit upside down. It would be nice to have it working whether upside down or right side up. Battery replacement isn't a problem. I've done one before and I'm pretty comfortable with changing out the Surface Pro battery. My dilemma with the keyboard connection is that I don't know if it's the connector on the keyboard or the tablet that's not working. The problem being on the keyboard side is ideal because I can simply get a new keyboard. If the problem is on the tablet side, that would be a bigger issue. Depending on the outcome of the keyboard connection, I can either reupholster the existing keyboard or, if cheap enough, buy a new one. Once you're at the UEFI screen, select Security, turn off TPM and SMT, then also disable Secure Boot. Not shown here, also set boot configuration to either have USB as the first boot device or the only boot device. Insert the ChromeOS boot USB into the USB port of the Surface Pro, then select Exit from the menu. The Surface Pro should now boot up into the ChromeOS installation screen. Once I rebooted into the ChromeOS Flex installation screen, I did come across an issue of the touchscreen not working. These kinds of hardware incompatibilities are common, and you can decide if it's a showstopper or not. For myself, it's not. I only need a keyboard and mouse for working from home. Also, because my Surface Pro keyboard cover is not working and a Bluetooth keyboard can't be added during the ChromeOS install, I'll need a splitter to share the single USB-A port on the Surface Pro. One port for the ChromeOS boot installer and the other for a USB keyboard. I ran into some hiccups while testing Teams. Although the microphone on my Surface Pro does work in ChromeOS, for some reason it doesn't work in my remote Teams meeting. The other thing that doesn't work is my Surface Pro's camera. The camera actually doesn't even work within ChromeOS, so it's not just within Teams. My workaround for this is to start the meeting on both the Surface Pro and my phone and utilize the camera and microphone from the phone while viewing the meeting on the Surface Pro. I could use only the phone for the meeting, but on occasion someone will share a document or screen, which would be tough to see on the small screen of a phone. So as far as the Teams meeting tests, it's not the ideal setup I wanted, but I think I can live with using the Surface Pro and the phone side by side during meetings. Otherwise, just doing remote work on the Surface Pro is great. There's no input lag, and the screen refreshes are snappy as long as I don't have internet issues. Since the battery can hold a little bit of charge and the charger is partially working, only the keyboard is not working at all, so I want to work on that next. I have tried cleaning all of the contacts using isopropyl and deoxit with no luck. I decided to remove the fabric from my keyboard because I have an idea of why it's not connecting. I'm guessing the problem with the Surface Pro keyboard is that it magnetizes to the bottom of the computer, wraps around and up the screen for about 1 inch, and the rest of it is folded up or down if in use or not. Thinking that all of these folds probably occurs multiple times a day, almost daily, You get a situation of bending something back and forth to break it in two. Only this time, you're not trying to do this on purpose. If I can get this keyboard working after stripping all of this fabric off, I want to leave it bare with no fabric. I feel like it's a good look, kinda transparent but not quite. After removing all the red residue, the new look in black and red looks kinda nice. The blue tape is to stiffen where the ribbon cable runs from the keyboard to the magnetic connector. My guess is this connection might be broken from all the folding. I'm not sure how to test that, but I did find this ribbon cable on eBay. When looking underneath, I think the cable that needs replacing is the one connected on the left of the circuit board and runs up to the top of the keyboard where I've covered it in blue tape. If I can dismantle the bottom of this keyboard and remove the cable without damaging anything, I'll attempt to replace the cable. If that fails, I did find a keyboard on eBay selling for $50. The removal of the keyboard's protective bottom cover required heat to loosen the glue. I was initially hesitant to use heat on a plastic bottom due to the potential for warping. Realizing I'd have to use either heat or chemicals, I decided to go with heat. Something that surprised me about this plastic is that it doesn't warp when heated. I didn't want to test how much heat it could take, but heating enough to loosen the glue was not a problem. Even after detaching the plastic cover from the keyboard, there was a film to remove to get to the ribbon cable. After more heat to peel away the film, then heat to peel off the ribbon cable, I finally completed the disassembly in about 20 minutes. Here's the disassembled parts. You can see at the top of the ribbon cable where it tore into two pieces during disassembly. The torn ribbon cable wasn't too much of an issue since it's most likely the part that needs replacement. Because this keyboard may not work even after replacing the ribbon cable, I went ahead and ordered a replacement keyboard. I'll turn the repair of this keyboard into a separate video, which could be interesting if I can get this keyboard working. This is my power adapter for the Surface Pro 4. I gave it a quick visual inspection, and besides the problem with the connector only working if plugged in upside down, it also has a frayed housing near the outlet plug. I'll start out with repairing the frayed housing since that's the easiest damage to fix. Although the shrink tubing is too big for the damaged area, it's the only size that fits over the small end of the cord. I'll double up the shrink tubing for durability's sake, and that should be an easy resolution to the frayed housing. If you noticed, I used a cigarette lighter to heat the shrink tubing the first time, but used a soldering iron the next time. Anything with enough heat will shrink the tubing. Here's the completed shrink tubing fix. I also did the adapter cord because it had a bend in it that looked like it could eventually become frayed. The two layers of shrink tubing are visible where the cord enters the shrink tubing. As mentioned earlier, this power connector works fine when plugged in upside down. The problem I've had in the past is that it doesn't charge when right side up. For some reason, today it seems to be lighting up in either direction, but it's not as stable when right side up. This is actually the first time in years that it's ever been at least unstable, where before it would never light up no matter what I did. What I'm going to do is cover all the connection surfaces with deoxit and reinsert the connector multiple times to get the contact surfaces to rub together and clean each other off. I'm hoping some kind of buildup is the only problem and the deoxit will clean it off and get the power connector back to the reliable power source that it used to be. I picked up this battery through eBay for about $30 from ePower11. The company does a great job at packaging the battery. The clear plastic is made to fit this specific battery, and there is about a 1-inch gap between the battery and the edges of the box. I made a note of this company in case I ever need batteries in the future. I'm heating the edges up to remove the screen, but this should be an easy removal. I've taken off this screen a couple of times in the past and have always reused the old adhesive to hold the screen in place. I was confident the strength of the old adhesive would be fine, but after replacing the battery this time, it's about time I use some new adhesive. The old adhesive is tacky, but getting the pick under the screen is a lot easier, and lifting each edge goes quickly once I get it started. There's a couple of ribbon cables to detach to separate the screen. I used the very pointed tip of my needle nose tweezers to lift the edge of the shield that covers the cable. If you don't have a needle nose, anything thin and stiff like a razor blade should work. Once that's out of the way, the cable can be detached. For the second cable, I partially lifted the shield just enough to get my needle nose underneath of it to detach the cable. If I could go back in time, I would have done this step before what you'll see after this. I decided to remove the two ribbon cables from the motherboard and move them back to the screen. Hanging off the motherboard, they sort of get in the way while I'm working on other things, and I feel it would be better if they weren't there. So, be aware in the following clips, you'll see these cables still on the motherboard, then suddenly they'll be gone. That's because I did some reorganizing of the video clips after they were already recorded. There are 10 screws holding down the different parts of the cooling system. Most of them are out in the open, but one of them is under the ribbon cable and 4 of them are under the shielding that must be removed to get to them. For some strange reason, I also found that one of the screws had a different size Torx head. It might be because it's a beefier screw that holds down the fan. Gently prying up on the brackets under the shield will release the cooling system, which may feel stuck due to dried thermal paste. One last thing before the cooling system can be removed, there is a tiny ribbon cable to detach. It's a flip-up type connector, so once you flip up the white side of the connector, the cable will release from the black side. There are 7 screws holding down a section of the motherboard that must be removed. Removing these screws makes it possible to lift one side of the motherboard slightly to free the battery connector, which is being held in place by the downward force of the motherboard being screwed in place. The battery is adhered to the case with a very strong tape. The isopropyl alcohol I typically use when removing batteries is not as effective as it usually is, but the alcohol along with a thin spatula will slowly delaminate the battery from the case. The process of a little alcohol, then pushing the spatula further in is extremely slow going, so be patient. To disconnect the battery's connector, wedge something underneath the motherboard to hold it up. Angle the battery upward so a small spatula or spudger can be slid under the battery's ribbon cable to peel it off the case and pull it out from under the motherboard. For a clean look, I removed the tape that was still on the case and wiped the area clean with isopropyl alcohol. The blue tape is to keep the tape residue from getting onto motherboard components. I initially had some trouble installing the new battery due to misalignment of the ribbon cable pads. I ended up removing the entire motherboard to fix this. If I draw a line through the properly aligned ribbon cable on the right, you can see how far out of alignment the one on the left is. The pads have to be in a specific spot so when the motherboard is placed on top of them, the pins will not miss the pads. With a little bit of bending and twisting of the cable and readjusting the battery placement, I was able to get the ribbon cable pads aligned correctly. So here's the properly installed battery awaiting screen installation. To close up the Surface Pro, I like to use a two-sided tape that's worked well for me on phones. It's actually the tape that's holding my Pixel 5 screen on right now. I usually stick the tape on all 4 sides of the chassis, leaving the backing on till I'm ready to mount the screen. I'll then place the screen onto the chassis in its final position to be sure it will seat correctly. I can now remove the backing from the tape, starting at the bottom of the tablet. I'll stick the screen's edge to the bottom, then peel off the rest of the backing and lay the screen down onto the rest of the tablet. I think I'll get a lot of additional mileage out of this ChromeOS Flex Surface Pro 4. The power adapter works great whether right side up or upside down. I have a new keyboard and a new battery. I'll set up this ChromeOS Flex installation with my work from home account, but for doing work when I'm on the road. I prefer to use this computer because I've already gotten my best years out of it as my Windows machine. Now that I can give it new life as a ChromeOS machine, its decent hardware specs should make it a useful tool for many years ahead. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below. That's all I have for now, and I'll catch you in the next video.